Hello and welcome to you all to today's OPTEX webinar. My name is Mathew Oakley and we'll be joined by Neil Foster from the UK sales team. Today's presentation will be 30 to 45 minutes and today we would like to discuss with you the OPTEX external security detection application and considerations. There is a chat box for any questions and there is never a silly question. We do hope and trust that you'll find this educational and informative. And at the end of the 30 to 45 minutes, our contact details will be available to contact us for advice, site visits and assistance with projects. This video will also be added to the many sales and engineering videos on our YouTube channel. Please click to subscribe. Okay then. So let's enjoy this, the best detection in the world for you. Okay, so what we're going to do first of all is just build up the picture. So you're arriving on a site. Now use your imagination today. This could be a commercial application, this could be a back garden. Just try and build it in your mind when you pull up to a site how you may protect their property externally. And let's not forget that OPTEX also do an internal range of PIRs and dual techs. But let's today talk about the external range. So you're pulling up to the site there and you're thinking, how can I cover these premises? So first of all, you could consider fence protection. So if you want to protect the premises from someone cutting the fence, climbing it, climbing under, then we have a fence protection range for you. These are the things we'll be going through as we move forward. We have perimeter protection. One of the things OPTEX is most famous for is our beams, our active beams. So we'll be going through those and the wired and wire-free options included. Then you have your volumetric internal detectors. So these will be long range and short range detectors to cover the foregrounds. You've got roof protection. So this is something that's quite popular these days in inverted commas. This is an angle people are trying to get into buildings, which is putting ladders up against sort of next door's fence, getting onto the roof and climbing in that way. So we will consider roof protection as well. We've got building protection, so close perimeter detection. And this is the dream. So you go to site and you sell them all of these applications, win-win for both you and OPTEX. Now, when you pull up to site, these are the main considerations and indeed the main questions you should be asking your clients. Okay, so think about things like the vegetation. If you go to a site in February, it's going to be a totally different picture when you go there in July and August with vegetation growing, etc., trees hanging, these sort of things to consider. Animals, are there going to be small animals on the site? Are there going to be things like foxes, even things like elephants we can consider? Think about light and reflection, think about the temperature. So is it going to be -10? Is it going to be +40? Just think about these things. The site configuration, is it an open or a closed site? Has it got a fence around it or not? The ground, is it a flat concrete car park or is it an undulating golf course or a forest? Think about these things and have a good visual look when you get to site. And of course, the levels of security, what the client is requesting and what the level of security they require. Is it a temporary or permanent application? We can do both, of course. Transmission, is it wired, wire-free or PoE? And any integration with a VMS. So first of all, we're going to talk about fibre optic technology, and I will pass you now to my learned colleague, Mr. Neil Foster. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you very much. Morning, everybody. So yeah, the first technology that we're going to look at is fibre. Typically, fibre is used for detection on fences. So you're looking for somebody cutting or climbing a fence line, or we can actually give detection for anyone trying to burrow underneath a fence line. With that last part of anybody trying to go below a fence line, you need to have in consideration what the ground type is like. There's no way you're going to get an activation if you've just got loose soil below there. Somebody can potentially just dig that out. So if you are looking for a detection if somebody's going under the fence line, you need to make sure that's dropped into a concrete plinth. So the applications for the fibre, we've got typical fence line applications, so somebody cutting or climbing a fence line. Ideal product for that, we're UV resistant, you've got a long service life, not prone to any attacks from lightning strikes or anything like that. We can go very, very long range with that, so we can do anything from just a 1 or 2 zone system for a 50 or 100 metre fence line, right the way up to kilometers worth of detection. And we can actually get insensitive leading that allows us to have up to 20 kilometers away between the alarm processing unit and actually the sensing zone. So one of the applications to think about is the fence-mounted technology. The other where this technology can be deployed is actually in securing the fabric of buildings. So look down the bottom right-hand corner there, Hatton Garden. We didn't have a system on there. If we did have a system on there, things might have been different. But we've actually got many applications out there where the fibre optic product's actually been used, mounted on the fabric of the building, whether that be on the wall or whether that be on the metal cladding. And then what we're looking for is a gross attack of somebody trying to break through that. So that's kind of anything: secure storage, bonded warehouses, banks, security vaults, etc. But also anything sort of like data center, PC kind of environment, we can give detection on that. And then moving on, the last part of that technology is what we can actually do with the fiber sensors is actually secure fiber optic networks running into buildings. So if you've got a data center that's got perimeter security around it, you know nobody's going to get into the building. What the thing that you don't know is if anybody's going to try and attack that incoming fiber that's coming into that data center by lifting a manhole cover somewhere and then attacking it. What we can actually do is use fiber optic cables to make sensing zones. So somebody gets the lid off the hatch, then goes to try and attack the cable, whether that to be maliciously damage it or try and tap information out of it, then we can give you an activation that way when somebody starts interfering with that cable. So moving on to the next slide. The benefits of the fibre are it's immune to the effects of any lightning strike, any radio interference, any radar interference. It's just an inert glass, which is the fibre optic sensing element. It's just an inert glass that we transmit a laser light through. So it's ideal for any intrinsically safe environments. It's ideal for any sort of like hazardous environments, chemical depots, that kind of thing. As I said, it's immune to the effects of lightning strikes. The last thing you want is a lightning strike onto a palisade fence, for example, that being induced into the cable and that traveling up a copper cable and blowing up your alarm processing unit. With the fibre cable, you've never got a chance of that happening. Again, we don't transmit, we don't pick up any electrical interference, radar or radio interference. So it's ideal for any harsh environments, electric switch sites where you've got high voltage static, any kind of radio transmission sites where you've got radio transmissions on there. The cable, by its nature, with it being fibre optic, it's corrosion free. So at the time of install, if you get a little nick on the cable, you're going to get a little bit of water ingress there. You're never going to get any degradation of the fibre optic cable. A lot of copper-based systems, if you actually look at the small print on them, they'll all quote that you've got to change the copper cable after every 4 to 5 years. Again, that doesn't apply for the fibre system. There's no copper element, there's no corrosion element there. So we can give you a very, very long service life, typically around about 20 years when you've got the cables installed in a conduit out on a fence line. And the other thing to bear in mind is the system actually requires minimal maintenance. So once you've actually installed your fibre optic cable, you just need to go along every 6 months and do simulated cut tests and climb tests, make sure you're getting the activations. We've got many systems that are out there that just sit away, churn away and do their job. You don't have to keep going back and tuning the system to tune out any false alarms. It'll just sit there very stable on the fence line. So when we start looking at applications, there's lots of different fence lines that we can use. So chain link is thousands of kilometers of chain link with this product in the United States Air Force. So this product's designed originally for United States Air Force and is rolled out across the majority of their sites. So there's thousands and thousands of kilometers of chain link fencing. It can also be used for all other types of UK fencing. So we can have it on palisade, we can have it on security fencing. You can do lots of weird and wonderful things. So we can put it on outriggers on the top of concrete walls. As we've said with the data center applications, we can do it on perimeter walls, whether that be external walls, internal walls. You can also do it on rooftops, and it's ideal for sort of like storage and bank vault kind of applications. Again, moving on to the next slide, the considerations that we need to look at. I think my presentation is just a little bit slow there, but the considerations, you've got to look at the fence type. So one of the things that you need to bear in mind is all of those different fence types that you can see there will all conduct vibration in totally different ways. So the acoustics of a cut or a climb that you're going to get, or the vibration of a cut or a climb that you're going to get on there are all going to be totally different. So when we go to do that site survey, we need to look at the fence fabric, and where we've got chain link in one area and palisade in another, then ideally they need to be in different zones so we can maximize capture rate and minimize false alarms. If we then move on to the fence conditions itself, you need to make sure that your fence is going to be in a good state of repair. So again, looking at these fences that are on here, neither of those fences, well, ideally you won't be going to a site to look at those, but neither of those fences are going to be suitable for a fence mounted system. One of the things to look for is palisade fencing. You can think that that is an ideal fence for mounting the system on, but you do actually need to double check and make sure that you haven't got any loose palings in there, because if there is, they're just going to pick up the wind and they're just going to rattle in the wind. The other thing to bear in mind is vegetation. So where we get vegetation growing through fence lines there, any wind that's going to be on there, that vegetation is going to start moving around. It's going to be banging against the fence line, and again, it's going to cause interference. We can start and filter all that interference out, but the problem that you get is the more filtering that you put on to filter out that background noise, the less chance you have of picking somebody up as they try and climb over that fence, for example. We then need to look at actually climbing risks themselves. So there's lots of climbing risks out there. There's buildings that might be next to the fence line. You know, it might be that somebody can actually lean a ladder up against a building inside that fence line and climb over the top. But one of the things that we're noticing a lot more is actually gates themselves. So on this gate that's here, there's 3 or 4 different areas that we need to look at concern. The gate is actually a big solid metal object, not a lot of vibration in there. So you do have the potential risk of somebody setting a ladder up against the top of that. Climbing over the top, jumping over, and potentially not getting activation. Underneath gate is not always level and nice and tight like that, so you can have undulating ground level or slopes, and potentially that could be somewhere that somebody can crawl under. And then the last part is actually the gate post itself. So that kind of gate post, big solid foot by foot wide gate post, again, it's quite easy for somebody to put an A-frame ladder on there and climb over the top. So what we can do with that is we can start and look at the laser technology that we'll come onto later on, and we drop that laser technology onto there, and then we just give you a blanket of coverage across that gate, and then we can cover all those applications for somebody going under, over, or using the gate post. The other consideration that you need to take into mind is, or bear in mind, is what's next to the fence line. So here we've got a fence line and we've got a railway track that's running next to it. Every time you get a train that goes down there, it's going to cause a lot of vibration. The good thing with our system is we can look at frequencies and we can block frequencies out. So where that train's going to be going down that line, it's going to be creating a certain frequency. We can block that out, but we can still give an activation for something below that frequency, i.e. somebody trying to climb up that fence, or something above that frequency, i.e. somebody trying to cut that fence.
I think it's good to point out as well, Neil, that with the FibreSense, we can budget cost remotely, but obviously really the idea is that we get one of the sales guys on site to conduct a proper survey for this application.
Yeah, definitely. We can do a budget cost. Google Earth is a fantastic thing, but any kind of perimeter application, it doesn't show you all the information that you need. So yeah, we can do a budget cost based on photographs, based on distant measurements, Google Earth images, for example, but you do need to go and do a site survey just to look at the different fence fabrics that are there and actually then make sure that the fence fabric is actually suitable. We have had some sites where there's even been new fences that have been installed but not actually been installed to spec, and when you look on the paper and before, you know, if you're working on a site that's actually design stage, you can specify a system, but then when it's actually installed, if the fence line's not installed to correct specification, there's a lot of movement, then again, that's just something that's going to cause an issue. Something that can always be corrected, but you do just need to do that survey just to bear that in mind. So
I think a pertinent point as well is the commissioning side of things, which we will be aiding. That's imperative that we would come along and assist the guys to install this product and commission it correctly so it works first time.
Yeah, so we tend to do pre-install training to everybody has a nice hands-on feeling, know how to install the system. Once it's then installed, then our tech support will come out and just make sure that everything's installed correctly, and just do commissioning training on site as well to make sure it's all commissioned off and working correctly. So that's moving on from the fibre technology. Matt's now going to give you a run through the active beam technology.
Okay, so yeah, over to active beams. This is what OPTEX is very famous for. Certainly before I joined the company a few years ago, I knew all about the beams from years ago installing these, and I always thought they were wired beams, but you can actually get wired or wire-free options, a PoE version. So a really good solid product, active IR beams. And what you're looking at is a virtual perimeter line. So if you have a look at the image there, you can cover the top of a fence, for example. If someone were to clamber up that fence and try and get over, then the active beams is a good solid detector to pick people up. You can go up to 200 meters on a wired detector. Then you can go up to 100 meters on the wireless version, we have basically 3 versions. So there's the AX version, the 100 and 200. So the AX will go from 30 meters to 60 meters, and that can be wired or wire-free. You've got the SLTNs or TNRs, and they're the hybrid version. So if you've got a cable one end of the transmitter, you can utilize that, but then have wire-free if it's out in the middle of a field, for example. And then you've got the SL units, which are the quad detectors. But up to 100 meters are wireless for you, so you can install them, and you can install them wall mounted, post mounted, or you can have them floor mounted. Again, we would talk you through that. So they're an excellent open perimeter protection, and it's a really good first alert for you. And if you look at the images, those are our pre-built beam towers. Again, we do the pre-building for you. We wouldn't want to send the bits to site for your engineer to try and put them together and make sure they all work. We can do this for you in-house, have them sent to site ready for the guys to, as I would call it, screw to the wall and commission, and they're ready to go. These are a very, very solid detector for you. As you can see by the images, you can have the odd pigeon go through, that's not a problem. And we have the dual beams, which are the AX version, as I say, or the quads are the SLs. So always consider the weather and the temperature. So if you have a site that's particularly prone to fog or freezing temperatures, like that gentleman there who is clearly suffering, just consider that when you're putting the proposal together. Again, that's what the sales team and the tech team are there for. Just give us a call if you have any questions on these things. Do consider, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, the ground level, the undulation. So can someone crawl under? Can they hop over off of a fence post? The one on the bottom right is exaggerated, of course, but you know, we need to think about, is it a reasonably level floor? So when we put the beams on, there's no way of anyone climbing underneath. And your power and connectivity, as I say, for the beams, you have 3 options. So you've got wired. If you've got cabling in place, that's fantastic. If you've got wireless, that's not a problem at all. There's a wireless universal transmitter as well, which will work to any control panel for you. And we've got IP and PoE for you. So now then we'll move on to our 3D thermal sensors, and back to you, Neil.
Yeah, so the Redwall SIP detectors that a lot of people are familiar with. There's thousands and thousands of them scattered all over the UK and Ireland, giving good general trap detection. So designed to detect the presence of a human being in motion. So technology that's looking at the temperature difference between me as a human target and then the background. Typically looking at 1.5 degree difference at maximum range, and we can give you a nice, good, solid, reliable detection with that. Volumetric detection patterns are available, so we can go 50 meter by 30 meter, we can go 30-20, using the different presets on those, or the different outputs on those to track presets. So when we look at the 100 meter detector looking along a fence line, for example, we can give you a preset which is up to 5 meters. We can then give you another one which is 5 meter up to 50 meters, and then we can give you a third one which is 50 meters up to 100 meters. So it works really, really nicely with trigger and PTZ cameras to track somebody as they're moving around the site. Very, very cost effective. So single point detector, you just need to cable to the one end of it, and then you've got that big detection area. So 50 meters by 30 meters or 100 by 3, and very, very flexible in the way that can be installed. So we can do wire free, we can do hardwired, and we can also do IP versions as well to hook into VMS systems. Typically used for remote video response. So you're going to get an activation, it's going to be triggered off site, and it's going to be verified by somebody off site. Things to bear in mind, any passive infrared detector can get some background interference from weather. So if you are looking at vegetation, for example, that vegetation's blowing around in the background, that's something that you need to bear in mind. With these detectors, you do need to do the training on them. You do need to use the area viewfinder and a walk tester to be able to set them up correctly. Once you set them up, typically you can actually filter out 80 to 90% of the false alarm causes, and they are a very, very stable detector. The other considerations you need to take in mind is you need to look at the ground levels. So if you've got that ground sloping up there, then it's going to reduce the range of the detector. Likewise, if the ground's sloping down, then that will actually extend the range of the detector. So a passive infrared detector is just picking up high energy. There's not actually a limit on it. The unit is limited by the installation height, which then gives you the grounding of the optics. So with the detector and on the installation height, we're actually designed to be 2.3 to 4 meters with these. actually optimized for the 4-meter mounting height, because that then enables us to ground the OPTEX just past the maximum range of the detector. So that detector that's sat on there is a 100-meter unit. So where we get the target at 100 meters, then those optics will ground themselves just beyond that, and that stops the detector from overranging. So that's one of the key points in actually setting a detector up. It's only the installation height and the angle of detection that allows that detector to ground itself and stop overranging. So the setup is really key on that. Moving on to the power and the connectivity, again, we can do the hardwired version, so the full range of SIPs are available in hardwired and also the PoE version. And the shorter range products, so the 3020, the 4010 and the 40x4 are also available in wire-free versions. So that's ideal for a site that might have an installation on it and you go back sometime later, they want to add an additional detector, but it's over the other side of the tarmac compound that's out the back of the site. So what we can do is, rather than doing a lot of civil works and digging that up, we actually do wire-free transmission. You can install that detector in the location that needs to go in and then just use that wire-free transmission to get that back to the site and hook it into the existing CCTV system. So animals and vegetation, we've already kind of covered the vegetation side of things, but on the animals, you do need to bear in mind that these detectors can pick up a human being crawling along the ground. So that's one of the advantages. One of the disadvantages is if you get 4 or 5 or more rabbits in a particular area, then potentially you're going to get that as a false alarm cause. There's always a fine balancing act with any kind of external detection between capture rate and false alarm resistance. You want to be able to capture your human target, but you want to be able to resist false alarms from animals, for example. But if you get a large clump of rabbits that are all in the same area, that's not dissimilar to somebody trying to crawl along the ground. So it is potentially that you're going to get an activation. But again, these systems are typically remote video response systems, so it's going to go through to a control room, and that person is then going to be able to verify what that's actually caused that activation.
And just to reiterate, Neil, the online training is free. It takes about 30 minutes of your time and certificated as well. But it's imperative with the Red Bulls that you purchase the SIP-AT tool. Yeah.
Yep. So with that, you get the area viewfinder. So that's just a little plate that you put in the front of the detector, and it'll actually show you, the engineer, the exact layout of where the detection patterns are. You can then plug in the walk tester and you can walk test that to make sure that the detection's falling in the areas that you want and you're not actually getting any of that overranging that we mentioned earlier on. So yeah, the walk testers are key.
Okay.
So moving on to the
yeah, go on. Sorry,
Matt, I was going to say, moving on to the higher mount detectors. So we've got the HX and the QXI series. So again, what we tend to find on a lot of applications, even when we're doing the remote video response, that we get a lot of the red wall applications, but there's always areas, you know, around the back by the bin store, for example, where you need a smaller detector. So we have the HX and the QXI, which are shorter range detectors, typically 12 meters. Wide angle 90 degree. Benefit with these, because of the optics and the way that they're laid out, we do have small animal tolerance, so you can have those 5 or 6 rabbits running around, you can have cats and dogs walking around, and you're not going to get false alarms with these. So these are ideal for installation, for fill-in, used on a lot of residential applications, but also used on a lot of commercial applications, even to the larger commercial applications where you get those little fill-in areas that you need to cover. So high mount height, 2.5 to 3 meters typically. And the good things with these detectors is very, very easy to adjust the detection pattern and mask it out. So you can very easily reduce the range on them. You can very easily reduce the width and mask particular areas out that you might be prone to false alarms. So another nice little product just to have in the tool bag and bear in mind is the HX and QXI that will complement the RVR sort of system on the larger commercial, or come in nicely for the smaller commercial and residential applications. And again, these are available as hardwired and also wire-free products. So I think Matt's now going to go through the little shorter range, lower mounting height products, which are also very, very useful.
Thank you very much, Neil. Yes, we sell an awful lot of these two here. These are good entry-level detector for you. So bottom right, for example, is something called an FTN, a fit detector. That's a short-range curtain detector from 5 meters down to 2 meters. Again, as Neil just said, you can adjust these sensors to suit. A great little application for these, and we're selling an awful lot for this application, is to cover a front gate, a back gate on a residential home, for example. So you can always go back and talk to your existing client base and upsell them and tell them you've got something new. And what you do with this is just put it on chime. You don't even need to have it alarming. You can just have it on chime, and you get a little ping every time the postman turns up. And I won't name names, but if you're getting a delivery and they said they've called, you can tell if they have or not. So little things like that, or maybe covering your shed with your expensive bike, or your garage with the Ferrari parked inside, all sorts of applications. But that's a really nice, neat little detector called the FIT, the FTN, on the bottom right. Bottom left-hand corner, you have the left and right BXS detector. Again, very popular because it's very aesthetically pleasing. It's Italian design. You can have different colors on the lid there, so you can have white, black, or silver. And just to note as well, all detectors can be Aral colored. So whatever color you would like, just specify up front and we can get it painted for you and sent out to you ready to go, whether it be the same color as a brick wall or some green foliage, whatever would suit the client. But yeah, the BXS, so you've got 12 meters left, 12 meters right, 40 feet either way, and you can adjust that independently. So you could have your 12 meters on the right hand side detector, for example, or have 5 meters on the other side, or even mask it, whatever would suit you. But a very nice, neat perimeter detector. And what that means is you could walk around the garden, no problem at all, or even the forecourt. That's not going to trip until you're actually getting right up to the building, and then it will give you the first knock, and then you would know if someone was outside before they've even entered the property. That's the sell. You tell the people it's going to trip before they actually enter the building. Okay, so that's the BXS, and you have the FTN, wired or wire-free detectors for you. Next one along, the bottom left-hand corner is a WX. Now that's our newest product. That's a 180-degree 12-meter detector. It's a two-zone detector, so you can separate the left and the right, as it were. So imagine this was sat on the front of your own home. You could cover maybe the driveway with, as I say, the chime function, but maybe have the lawn, if you will, or the lawn area that could be on an alarm, for example. So it's a completely independent detector with two zones, wired or wire-free again. And on the right-hand side is an old favorite, which is called the VXS. And again, that has different colorings on it. That has white, black, and silver fascias to suit the client's requirements. Again, wired and wire-free. So SMDA logic, super multi-dimensional analysis. In layman's terms, it monitors the background environment and adapts if necessary. There is a techie version of that, and we'll post it up later on. Number two, adjustable detection. As I say, you can fit the detector to suit the environment and the application and the client's requirements. Small animal and pet tolerance. Again, a picture says 1,000 words. So you see the bottom left-hand picture there. You've got a small pet, cat, dog, fox, anything that may be an issue in your garden or on your sites, that will not trigger unless the two pyros are breached. Bottom right hand drawing, for example, you've got a person walking towards a building, that's when you will get the activation and the ping. Flexibility, again, wired, wire-free, or PoE, whatever is required. Very aesthetically pleasing, and as I said earlier on, with the colouring, bottom left-hand corner, that was one application for a high-end res I did recently. So we've got a nice green colour, foliage colour on it, and that sat very nicely in the middle of their garden. Top colours there, black, silver, white. Bottom right-hand corner, the BX. Very good-looking detector, the BX. Just looks like a light fitting when it's on the wall. And a volumetric as well. So it's a good infill detector and a good approach detector for you. Yeah, so now over to Neil.
Sorry, Matt, I was just going to say just a couple of things on that. On the wire-free side, we do our own wire-free transmission, but we can, if you're looking to put it on an intruder alarm panel, we can actually work with any of the majority of wire-free intruder panel manufacturers and put in their transmission to our detectors, so you can have the nice reliable detection outside and hook it through to the existing intruder manufacturer or intruder panel manufacturer that you might be using. So that's something to bear in mind. And then with regards to small animal tolerance, it's something you've really got to see to believe. I've got these installed at my house. Anybody that's seen any of my test videos, I've got 5 or 6 cats that are always running around. I've got 3 dogs that are running around. and these sensors just do not false alarm. But yet when I go walking out, it'll then create an event for us. So whether that be switching lights on or triggering through the CCTV. So it's something that you've really got to get them installed, and then really appreciate the performance of these detectors. But rather than just hooking through to CCTV for local monitoring, what we've actually brought out now is app-based monitoring as well. So we have the OPTEX Vision app, and we've brought out the unit that you can see on there, which is a VXI-C mod. So the VXI-C mod will just sit on top of the VXI detector. It will take its power from that detector, and then what you can do with that is you can then use that VXI-C mod, hook it onto your Wi-Fi network, and then anything that causes an activation on that detector will then be picked up by the camera and then transmitted through the Wi-Fi, through your broadband, and then can be delivered to the app for you as a notification. So the camera on that is a lovely little camera. It's a 180-degree fisheye, true day and night, IR illumination on it. So that's a nice little add-on. So if anybody's doing little residential applications, fighting in the market of the 2 or 3 other companies that are going to be quoting for the same job, if you can go along and give some added benefit in a VXI detector with the C mod on outside, stick it in the back garden, protecting the garden furniture, the garden shed, whatever it may be out there. If anybody does come along, they're going to get an activation pushed through to the app notification. So if that's something that you're offering which other companies are not, then it can help you secure the sales in your general day-to-day business. So that's the app-based visual verification. We can also go on from that we do have visual verification products coming along as well. So we'll now move on to the red scan, so the laser-based product. So this is ideal for creating a wall or a plane of detections, whether it be a wall of detection looking down the side of the building or a plane, horizontal plane looking parallel with the ground. Technology, there's 2 different versions that are available. There's a 2020 and a 3060, which we'll come on to, but both technologies use time of flight. So what we're actually doing is pulsing laser out, it's hitting the target or the background, it reflects back in, and we measure how long it takes for that pulse to go out and hit that target and reflect. What we then do is, as we're spinning through our 95 or 190-degree cycle, is send 1 sample every 1/4 of a degree. So as we get an activation, we know exactly how far a target is away, and then we then know where through the cycle that target is. So we can then give XY coordinates on where that activation is occurring. What it also enables us to do is send the sample every 1/4 of a degree is actually measure the size of the target as well. So we can filter out birds flying past and just concentrate on things like human being activity within that area. With the XY coordinates, that also gives us the option of then being able to do masking and allocation. So what we can actually do is, on that scenario where you see the building, is if you've got a doorway on there and you want that to be a separate preset area, then we can just map that area out and allocate that door as a separate preset. So anybody goes towards the door, that pings off preset 1. Anybody going towards the building, then we can have 2 separate presets for that area. So red scan's ideal for those type of applications. Moving on to the next slide. Then with the red scan, because we're transmitting this laser light, it's not affected by any light levels. It doesn't need any light, so we can work in black, dark, and high sunlight levels. So we pulse that laser out, and it's just our own light that we're pulsing out and picking up the reflection of. So we're not affected by any light, any reflection, any glare, or again, doesn't matter whether it's dark or light. It can be used for virtual wall detection. So the application in the bottom right-hand corner there is just us covering museum and galleries. So what we can actually do with the red scan is set it up to pick up small targets, i.e. 50 mil, somebody's hand going towards a painting, and we can set up those hotspot areas that you can see there. So the 4 different red areas on there, the 4 different zones would be 4 different paintings that we might want to protect. And the thing with the red scan is you can mount it up in that top left-hand corner there, and because it gives you 20 meter by 20 meter at 95 degrees, it's actually going to cover all of that area just that one single device. So you can now have the presets, have a camera set further back that can zoom in on that. If you tried to do a similar sort of thing with cameras, you'd need 2 cameras up there to try and give the same sort of detection. So we can also do horizontal detection. So the horizontal detection can be used for the top right image that you can see there, so covering the entrance towards a premises, but can also be used for covering roofs, can be used for covering skylights. We can also use it for thrown objects. So we do a lot of airport applications where they're looking for thrown objects being thrown from secure to unsecure side. So just moving on to the next slide. So this is the 3060. So with this unit, it gives you 30 meter radius at 190 degrees, but we also have the option to extend the range and go to a 50 meter radius. We can give vertical or horizontal detection with this, or we can actually give it any angle between the 2. You've got automatic area set, so when you set the unit up, you ask it to do an area learn, and then what it'll do is just scan the area that it can see, and it'll set that up as its predefined boundary, which you can then adjust as required. Because we do that scanning, and because we have the time of flight technology, we know exactly what's in the field of view of the red scan. We also then have an anti-masking and a reorientation alarm on it as well. So we can set up a filter that then says a certain percentage of the area has to be masked for a certain duration, and then we want the system to produce a masking alert. We've got fog cancellation algorithms in there. Fog doesn't tend to be that much of an issue with this unit because we're only looking at a 30-meter or 50-meter radius. Because it's only that short distance, you would need a severe fog in there to give you an issue. But basically what the unit will do is it'll look for the fog. As it sees the fog start to build up, then it'll then automatically start to crank up the power of the transmission of the laser light to maintain your zone for you. We've got your unique detection algorithms, so we're looking at the size of a human being. We've got the size judgment on there, so we can give activations for a human being while filter out a lot of false alarm causes. And we can also have a lot of different settings on there, so we can go from outdoor settings to indoor, indoor thrown object, indoor wall topping scenarios with that as well. So very, very flexible in the applications that it can be used for. And we're now just going to go through a few of those applications. So this is a fence line application. We've got the red scan mounted at the top of the fence there, and then what we can do with that is just angle it way down the fence, from the fence, and then we can set up that area of detection. So that might be for advanced notification of somebody heading towards that fence line, or that might actually be the inner fence on a higher security site, and you've actually got the outer fence, and that's the sterile zone. So you can actually angle it from the top of the inner fence to the base of the outer fence. So that's going to give you detection in case anybody tries to bridge between those two fences. Moving on to the next one, we're going to look at a warehousing facility or a compound facility. And what we've actually got on this one is there's a car park to the right of that fence line and then the secure site to the left-hand side of that. So this is a typical scenario where you might have looked at active beams or you might have looked at fence-mounted detection. If you looked at a fence-mounted detection, it would give you an activation if somebody's cutting or climbing the fence. The problem that you've got is if somebody reverses a vehicle up through that car park towards that fence line, climbs on top of that vehicle and then jumps over the fence, you're not going to get an activation. With the red scan, we can mount it at 4, 5, 6 meters high, and we can just have it looking down the face of that fence line. If anybody does that attack of reversing the vehicle up and jumping over the top, we're still going to give you an activation. Likewise, if anybody does attack the fence and jack the palings open as they go through there, we'll give you an activation. The other thing with that is looking at active beams. So if you did look to put active beams on there, with the fact you've got the fence line there, it's a potential climbing aid. So we're going to have to keep 1.5 meters to 2 meters back from that fence line. The problem with that on that site is, as you can see, there's vehicles on the left-hand side. So at best, those vehicles are actually going to reverse further back than that, and they're going to block the zone. So you're not going to be able to set that system at night time. At worst, they're actually going to reverse into the active beam tower and knock it over. So you're going to have to go back and refit it and replace it. So with this system, you install the red scan on the fence line at high mountain height, and you just have it looking directly down inside the fence. And we need roughly 0.5 meter between the fence line and those vehicles to give you secure detection. We can also use the red scans for horizontal detection. So on that application, it's mounted at 0.8 of a meter to 1.2 meters, and it's just looking out horizontal with the ground level. So anybody walking up towards those solar panels, will just give you a nice clean detection for that and give you the activation. Moving back to the next scenario, we can then look to do building detection with the red scans as well. So on this one, when it pops up, my presentation's been a little bit slow loading here. I think we've got a broadband issue. But what we can do with the red scan is mount it at a high level on the building there. And we can then install it and angle it down, looking away from the building. So that will give us advanced notification of somebody coming up to the fabric of that building. So that's a typical data center type application. With the angle bracket that we do, we can angle it anything up to 45 degrees, so you can stand it off quite away from the building, or you might just want to put it looking parallel down the wall. And it's just really how much of a sterile zone that you want between the detection and the building. So on that one, we've just based it out to the that step that's there. So anybody coming over the fence and then trying to drop down, will give you an activation for that. Moving on to the next application, we're then going to look at rooftops. So with the rooftops, Matt's already mentioned this, a lot of break-ins that we're seeing now where people are going to warehousing applications, using long scaffolders, ladders, actually breaking into the site next door that might not have as much security on it, identifying the fact that there's cameras installed at, let's say, 4 meter mounting height around the building, identifying that that'll be the detection. So what they just do is get a scaffolder's ladder, go from the site next door and bridge up onto the roof of the warehouse, then walk along the roof, drop down through the skylights onto the racking, do what they want, and then go back out the same way. So what we can do with the red scan is we can mount it on the top, on the roof there, and we can just have it scanning across. And then what we're going to do is just give a blanket coverage of detection right across that roof. Anybody getting up there, as soon as you got up onto the rooftop, that's when you're going to get your activation. You've got your camera up there, so we're going to give you verification on that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Neil. That was the 3060, the big brother. And now we'll just go and talk about the little brother, which is the 2020, 20 meters by 20 meters and a 95-degree radius on that. Again, same thing as the 3060, virtual wall, virtual ceiling. And this has PoE built in as well, ready to go. Again, so maybe internal application for you. As I say, it could be an orangery, it could be a museum, anywhere with value, for instance. So that's how it would look, virtual wall, virtual ceiling, and it can be ceiling or wall mounted. And by the way, just to add as well, there is, again, the training included in this is a free of charge training for you. Just ask, all you've got to do is ask. I do ping out a lot of these to the clients. Half an hour of your time, it gets you certificated, and it also facilitates you getting the Red Scan Manager software. So you'll be able to set this detector up on your own. However, we're always here for you, the tech department always there on the phone. So if you need any help setting these up, no problem, but you can help yourself and learn a little bit about the product before you go and sell it and give you that confidence when you're in front of the client. So again, just give us a shout on that and we'll set you up with some online training. Again, think about the applications when you go into a site. You could use the short range detectors, you can use the perimeter detectors, or you could use something like this, which is the 2020 on the wall. It's a very aesthetically pleasing detector. And again, as I say, wall or ceiling mounted, but this is the sort of coverage you could look for. And you can then segment out doorways, windows, anything you do or don't need to cover, but that's the sort of coverage you'd be looking at. Very aesthetically pleasing. It's about the size of a dome camera, the laser, the 2020. Use these a lot actually. I won't name names, but we've used a lot of these in our comms room applications. So again, you'll be looking at covering the ceiling, anyone dropping down through the ceiling like a Tom Cruise kind of character. And as Neil said earlier on as well, you can also consider people where they come up through the floor and getting into the property that way. So what you can think about is virtual wall, virtual ceiling. So you might have one on each aspect of the wall, one on the ceiling and one underneath. And then you have got a secure contained room. Again, warehouse application, we do, as Neil says, we get a lot of, shall we say, interest where people are actually coming through the roof and dropping down onto the top there. So again, consider what the radar can do for you, the laser can do for you here, and the sort of coverage it can give you. Obviously, with a motion sensor, that can do so much, but this will actually give you that virtual wall. Now we move on to the radar, and again, go back to Neil, if you will. Thank you.
Yeah, so radar technology, ideal for covering large open areas. So we can go anything from short range, 125 meter by 40 meter, right the way up to 1.4 by 1.2 kilometers with these technologies. So one of the things that we say about this is detecting beyond the fence. The idea with that is you might have a large site that you're trying to put detection onto. If you can actually see past the fence line, we can actually set that up as either a non-detect zone, so we can totally ignore it, or we can set it up as what we'd class as just a tracking zone. So just with a tracking zone, if somebody's messing around by the perimeter fence line, camera can spin round, zoom into that area, track somebody as they walk around there, and you just be recording that evidence onto the CCTV system. If somebody then breaches that fence line, comes into that site, as they're moving towards that site, then you could have a tracking and alerting. So the camera will continue to track them, but then you create an alert, so whether that goes through to the security guard or whether that's then sent off site. So with this technology, we actually cue the camera. So with the GPS coordinates that we set up, the camera will spin round and will display exactly what the camera can see using the tracking off the radar. We have the web interface, so we actually show you a GUI map. If we just flick onto the next slide there, it'll show you the GUI interface. So on the right hand side would have for example, a Bing map image. There are other mapping technologies available, but Bing map image available that would show the site. You can just see on there you've got the little crosshairs showing where that target is, and there's a little black scrolly line that's on there, which is what we class as a snail trail. So that'll show you where the activations occurred. it'll show you somebody as they walk around within that field of view, and then it'll also, in the top left-hand corner of that image there, we've got the camera that's spun round and is zoomed in at that target. Moving on to the weather conditions, the good thing about this technology, it'll actually work in all weathers. So the scene that you've got on the left-hand side there is actually a thermal camera that's trying to look through fog and snow. Although the thermal camera can't see, the radar technology continues to work. So our operator would see on the right-hand side that he's got a blue square there, that's his target. It would show him where it's been, where it's heading to. You'd have the camera image. Obviously you can't see anything on the camera image, but as that then target moves closer towards the camera, or maybe moves closer towards an additional camera that would then spin around and look at that, then you'll get the information. But the technology works very, very reliably in all weather conditions. It's very, very cost-effective technology with the distance of coverage that we can get. It's often you find that it's actually going to reduce project cost because we've got such long distance coverage on it. Pound per square metre, it's probably one of the most cost-effective. Reduce the project costs because we're interacting with PTZ cameras. Then basically what we can do is we can remove a lot of the infrastructure that you might have to put in there. Again, it's also a PoE product, so it'll work on an IP network. So if you've got existing fibre network running around there, existing locations that you can mount it on, whether that be existing columns that are out there, or a lot of the time we'll actually just keep it on the fabric of the building and then have it pointing out towards a fence line. We can control exactly what it sees and what it doesn't see. So when you actually look at equipment costs, sometimes the radar technology looks a little bit more expensive, but when it actually comes into the overall project cost, it actually comes out a lot more cost effective. It's also a high performance product, so what we can actually do with the radar technology is add a lot of filters on. So there's a couple of little screenshots on there. The top right hand side is a site that's been set up, but it's not had the filters enabled on that, and you can see lots of lines on there on the right hand side, and there's lots of activations. The box in the bottom left hand corner just gives you all the tracks and all the information on that. By starting to add filters on that, so that might be the speed of a target, it might be the direction of a target, might be the amount that a target has actually moved, then we can start and filter that out. So in this scenario, we've got multiple activations, 140 plus on the top, but when we actually drill it down with the filters, then we get down to literally one activation that is what we want to concentrate on. So very powerful technology. You can filter out a lot of unwanted false activation causes.
Okay, and now back to Neil with why should you be using a physical OPTEX sensor? Over to you, Neil.
Yeah, so we see a lot of people that are, for whatever reason, are looking at other technologies. The good thing about physical detectors is they're not prone to a lot of false activation causes that you get with cameras and onboard analytics, for example. Insects and spiders, that's a favourite thing. Cameras have always got a heat source in there, so they do generally attract insects and do attract spiders. So just a screenshot there, we've got an activation that's occurred and it's a nice big fat spider that's just walking across there. Doesn't matter what filter that you set up on there. You can look at target sizing, but on that it's the size of an elephant, so you're always going to get those activations. The other thing to bear in mind is shadows, so you can set up filters to say we're going to filter out that cat. So this is a site that it's actually working on. That cat walks across when light levels are higher and you don't get a false activation. The problem that happens here is a really low sun early in the morning, or if you get any other outside light source that's there, then that's going to cast a shadow. Typically we'll pick up that as a false activation. Again, with the physical detection, that wouldn't happen. Looking at weather conditions, again, you can get, especially with cameras with built-in IR, you can get reflection from, it might be snow, it might be rain, that's going to cause false activations. The scene on the top right-hand corner there, we've just got a hail shower that's come in. Again, you get different contrasts that are happening in the background, so we're getting false activations that have occurred there. Light level changes, one of the favourites is, again, you can set your site up to give detection through the day. At night time, you're going to get, if you've got vehicles driving past, you're going to get car headlights that are going to wash across that and create total different contrasts. If you get even worse, a rain shower that's happened and you're looking out over tarmac, you get lots of puddles that are occurring, headlights going across there, you're just going to get lots of different reflections. Again, it's going to be very, very difficult to filter that out. You can start and put
That's
more,
a big issue, isn't it? The puddles, Neil.
Yeah, and you can start and put more and more filters on, but the more filters that you put on, the more you're going to slow down the response. We're hearing some stories out there of people putting filters on and for different reasons. It's actually filtering out false activation causes. So it could be that you, typically any analytics you see is a nice promo video and it's in really strong daylight. One of the things that you get is in night time you get different light level contrast. It might be a target walks onto a site wearing black jeans and a white t-shirt. You get a really strong contrast and it concentrates on the white t-shirt. It's not the size of a human being. I'll not detect, so sometimes these things can just slow down the performance. Physical detection will just give you a nice reliable activation straight away. Again, looking at false alarm causes, you also need to look at missed alarm causes. So adding those filters on potentially going to miss activations. You then look at poor lighting levels on sites. So if you've got poor lighting level on site, again, commissioning a system during the day, fantastic, even lighting level. Switches into IR illumination, whether that be IR from the camera or an IR light on the CCTV, or sometimes you do get outside lighting sources that are going to actually switch the camera from monochrome back into colour. If that happens and you get a dark contrast in the background, again, chances are you're going to be able to get somebody walking across there without an activation. And then the last one on there is weather conditions. So that shot that you saw earlier on, the nice camera with the cats walking around, if you've got IR on that built-in camera and you've got a lot of rain on there, you're just going to get a lot of rain, a lot of reflections. If that camera can't see, you're not going to get an activation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Neil. So thank you all for your time. Are there any questions, Matthew?
Yes, we've got a few coming. First one, going back to the beams, someone wanted to know whether there was an option to have them pre-built.
Certainly are. As I say, you can get them in three sizes: 1.5 metre, 2 metre and 3 metre pre-built beam towers. We will help you through with the survey and the bits and pieces you'll need to put them together, but yes, you can have them pre-built, sent to site and ready to be floor mounted or wall mounted and ready to go. So we can take out the labour aspect for you, our end.
Cool, thank you. And then what's the typical lifespan of a battery in some of the detectors?
Well, in active beams, you're looking 3 to 5 years would be a good rule of thumb. On your motion sensors, obviously down to traffic, people moving past the detector on a daily and nightly basis, but typically you're looking around about 2 years.
Cool, all right. And then one more on the red scans is how do you set them up? And then second part to that question, is there any training available?
Okay, so yes, there's free online training. Just contact myself or Neil and we'll set you up with the free online training. It takes about 30 minutes of your time. It's certificated and once you pass the test, the 30-minute test, then you will be given the Red Scan Manager software, and this will enable you to set up your laser initially, and then obviously if there's any remedial works in the future you are free to do that yourselves. Also, we have that for our Redwall SIP range, and as Neil indicated earlier on, it's imperative that you have the SIP-AT tool. That's the SIP-AT tool that will aid you with commissioning. Again though, on our YouTube channel there are lots of how-to videos, but I would strongly recommend you get in touch with us regarding the Redwalls and the lasers and get your online training done, and that will really aid you and give you confidence when you're out on site with your clients.
Perfect, no, that's it. I think if there's any more questions, then do get in touch with Matt and Neil, who's got your contact details right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Neil, an expert in your field. We have both our email addresses there. Feel free to contact us. There's our website at the bottom there. The website, by the way, will always guide you through how you would put a proposal together. However, that is our job to assist you, okay? But always have a look on the website and you can find your way and find the product which would suit your application the most. But do get in contact with Neil and I and the rest of the sales and tech team. That's what we're here for, just to aid you and give you the right product for the right application. As you can see, we'll go around the parts again. The top left-hand corner, we have the lasers for you. We have your active beams. We have the fibre sense on the bottom left-hand corner, your radar bottom right, your perimeter, close perimeter detector, the BX, for example, and then the very world-famous Redwall SIPs. So as you can see, that's the ideal scenario. If we could have that on every job, that would be superb, but I'm sure there's a detector there which you can use. Also, as I say, check out our YouTube channel with this and all of our other engineering and sales clips for you. Okay, so thank you very much indeed for your time today, and we hope and trust we will see you soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.